I never thought my family would come to this, sitting across from my brother in a lawyer's office, fighting over the inheritance my parents left behind. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad courtroom drama. But this was my reality. Growing up, my brother, Jake, and I were close. He was 4 years older, always looking out for me when we were kids. If I scraped my knee, he was the first to pick me up. If I got in trouble at school, he was the one smoothing things over with our parents. I looked up to him, trusted him. But now, sitting across from him in this cold, sterile room, all I could see was a stranger. It all started after our father passed away. He had always been the glue that held our family together, the one who made sure everything was fair between us. Our mother had passed years before, and now, with both of them gone, all that was left was their estate, a house, some savings, and a small family business. Nothing extravagant, but enough to matter. I had assumed we would split everything evenly. That's what Dad always said. Everything gets divided 50-50, he used to tell us, making sure we understood that he wanted things to be fair. But when the will was read, things took an unexpected turn. The lawyer cleared his throat before speaking. According to the final will, the majority of the estate, including the house and business, will be transferred to Jake. My stomach dropped. That can't be right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad always said we would split it. Jake shifted in his chair, not meeting my eyes. Dad knew I could handle it better. You don't even know how to run the business, Ethan. I clenched my fists under the table. That's not the point, Jake. The point is that Dad promised we would share it. I would have figured something out. The lawyer gave me a sympathetic glance but said nothing. I realized then that this was a losing battle, at least in that office. As we walked out, I grabbed Jake's arm. When did this happen? Did Dad change the will before he died? Jake finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. Dad did what was best for the family. I scoffed. The family? Or just you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, Ethan, you don't need the house. You have a job, an apartment. The business would just be a burden on you. I stared at him, feeling something inside me crack. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about fairness, about knowing that the people you love won't betray you. Jake turned and walked toward his car, leaving me standing there in the parking lot. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't over. The days following the reading of the will were a blur of frustration, disbelief, and sleepless nights. I kept replaying that moment in the lawyer's office, Jake's casual dismissal of what was supposed to be my fair share. I told myself to stay calm, to think rationally, but every time I pictured him walking away like he had already won, my blood boiled. At first, I tried to reason with him. I called him, sent messages, even showed up at the house, our parents' house, but every conversation ended the same way. You need to let this go, Ethan, he said one evening, standing in the doorway while I stood on the porch. Dad made his choice. I'm just following his wishes. I stared at him, searching for some kind of remorse, some sign that he understood how unfair this was. Dad's choice? I scoffed. Or did you convince him that you deserved more? Jake's jaw tensed. That's not what happened. Then explain it to me, I demanded, because the dad I knew would never do something like this. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You wouldn't understand. You were always the dreamer, Ethan. You never cared about the business, about responsibilities. You left, remember? You went to college while I stayed behind and helped Dad run everything. And now you just expect half of it? I clenched my fists. I left because that's what Dad wanted for me. He supported my decision to go to college. He wanted me to have choices, to build my own future. Jake's expression softened for a second before hardening again. Then do that. Build your own future. You don't need this house, this business. But that's not the point. I shot back. It's not about needing it, Jake. It's about what's right. Dad always said we'd share everything. But somehow, by the time he passed, you got everything and I got nothing. You really don't see the problem with that? For the first time, Jake looked uncomfortable. He shifted, crossing his arms. I don't have time for this, he muttered. I have a lot to take care of now. And just like that, he shut the door in my face. Finding the truth. I refused to let it go. Something didn't add up. Did Dad really change his will willingly? Or was there more to the story? I started digging. I went through old emails, financial records, anything that might tell me what had happened before Dad passed. I even reached out to his closest friends, hoping someone would shed some light. That's when I found out something that made my heart drop. Dad had mentioned revising his will months before his death, but he never said he was leaving everything to Jake. In fact, one of his friends told me Dad had spoken about splitting everything evenly, just like he had always said. So what changed? I went to the lawyer's office again, pushing for answers. When exactly was the will changed? I asked, my voice firm. The lawyer hesitated, then checked his records. It was updated 3 months before your father passed. 3 months. That was around the time Dad had been in and out of the hospital. Weak, vulnerable. I swallowed hard. Did he come in himself? Did he sign the papers personally? The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Your brother handled most of the meetings on his behalf. Your father signed the final documents, but he hesitated. He was already quite ill by then. I felt a chill run through me. Was it possible that Jake had pressured him? Taken advantage of his condition? The thought made my stomach twist. I had always trusted Jake, but now I wasn't so sure. The family confrontation. I knew I couldn't do this alone, so I reached out to our extended family, our aunt, our uncle, even some cousins. I needed people to hear what I had found, to hold Jake accountable. We met at my aunt's house, a neutral place where emotions wouldn't get too out of hand. The tension in the room was thick as I laid out everything I had discovered. Jake sat across from me, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. So you're accusing me of what, exactly? He said coldly. I'm saying something isn't right, I replied. Dad was sick when the will was changed, and you were the one handling everything. Don't you think that's a little convenient? Jake scoffed. You're reaching, Ethan. Dad knew I was the responsible one. He wanted the business to stay in the family, not be sold off when you decided to take another risk with your life. This isn't about the business, Jake, I shot back. It's about fairness, about Dad's real wishes. You were with him every day. Tell me the truth. Did he really decide this on his own? Or did you push him into it? Silence. For the first time since this all started, Jake didn't have a quick response. His fingers tapped against the table, a nervous habit he had since we were kids. Our aunt spoke up. Jake, honey, if there's something you're not telling us, now is the time. His jaw tightened. I did what I had to do. I felt my heart stop. What does that mean? Jake exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Dad. He wasn't thinking clearly those last few months. I had to make decisions. Hard ones. Ones that protected the business. I shook my head. You mean you made the decisions that benefited you? He didn't deny it, and just like that, the truth started to unravel. The moment Jake admitted to manipulating Dad's decisions, the room fell into a stunned silence. I couldn't believe it. After all these weeks of denial, of making me feel like I was the selfish one, he had finally said it. He had controlled everything. Our aunt, who had always been close to our dad, was the first to break the silence. Jake, what do you mean you had to make decisions? Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable sharpness underneath. Jake rubbed his hands together, avoiding eye contact. Dad was weak, okay? He wasn't thinking straight. The doctors had him on so many medications. He wasn't himself. He kept saying things that didn't make sense. So I did what I thought was best. I felt a lump in my throat. You mean you decided what was best for you? His head snapped up, his jaw tightening. That's not fair. I stayed, Ethan. I took care of him. You weren't here. You were out living your life, while I was the one making sure he got to his appointments, handling the business, paying the bills. I slammed my fist on the table, making everyone jump. And you think that gives you the right to take everything? You think because you were here, that means Dad didn't want me to have anything? That's a lie, Jake. You know it. His nostrils flared. You have no idea what it was like watching him deteriorate. He was confused, scared. He kept asking for Mom. And then there was the business, the house, so many things to manage. I had to keep everything together. I scoffed. And somehow, keeping everything together meant keeping everything for yourself? He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Dad told me he didn't think you needed it, Ethan. That you were already doing fine. He was proud of you for making your own way, for not relying on anyone. Meanwhile, I was here, keeping the family name alive. I stared at him, my chest heaving. And did Dad say that? Or was that just something you told yourself to feel better about what you did? Jake looked away. That was all the confirmation I needed. What? Now? I should have felt victorious. He had admitted it. Everyone in the room had heard him. But instead of relief, all I felt was exhaustion. I had spent weeks fighting, pushing, digging for the truth. And now that I had it, what was I supposed to do? Take him to court? Tear our already broken family apart even more? Or was there still a way to fix this? I exhaled sharply, looking around the room. Our aunt and uncle looked heartbroken. Our cousins exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't just about me and Jake anymore. This was about our family. I turned back to him. You say Dad told you I didn't need the inheritance. That I was already fine on my own. Jake didn't respond. I took a deep breath. Well, guess what? This was never about the money. It was about knowing that I mattered just as much as you did. That Dad still saw me as his son, not as some outsider who walked away. Jake's expression wavered for a split second before hardening again. Then what do you want, Ethan? You want me to just hand over half of everything? Undo all the work I've put into keeping the business afloat? No, I said firmly. I want you to make things right. The moment of decision. Jake shook his head. And what does that even mean? I glanced at our aunt. Dad always believed in fairness. He would never have wanted one of us to take everything while the other got nothing. I turned back to Jake. So here's what we're going to do. We fix this together. Jake let out a bitter laugh. You think I'm just going to give up half of everything now? After everything I've done? I leaned forward. You said you made these choices because you thought you were doing the right thing. Fine, but now you know it wasn't right. So if you actually care about family, about Dad's legacy, then prove it. We split things fairly. I don't want to take the business from you. I don't even want the house. But I do want what's fair. Jake's fists clenched. At his sides, I could see the battle happening in his head, the fight between pride and guilt, between greed and conscience. For a long moment, I thought he was going to refuse. That he'd dig his heels in, lawyer up, and turn this into an all-out war. But then, something in his expression shifted. His shoulders slumped slightly, his jaw unclenched, and for the first time since our father's death, he looked at me, not as a rival, not as an enemy, but as his brother. He exhaled slowly. Fine, we'll talk about it, but I need time. I nodded. Time is fine, as long as you actually mean it. He hesitated before finally extending his hand. Let's fix this. I stared at his hand, my emotions tangled in a mess of relief, anger, and lingering doubt. But in the end, I took it. For the first time since our father's death, there was an opening, a chance to make things right. Jake had admitted the truth. He had manipulated Dad's decisions, convinced himself that he was the rightful heir, and cut me out. But now, after weeks of fighting, he finally agreed to talk about making things fair. Still, a handshake wasn't enough. I knew my brother. He was stubborn, proud, and good at convincing himself that he was the victim. I had seen him do it before. So when we sat down again a week later, with lawyers and family members present, I was prepared for a battle. The final showdown. We met at our family attorney's office. The air was thick with tension. Jake sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. All right, we're here today to discuss the estate and how to proceed given the recent revelations. Jake let out a sigh. Look, I already told Ethan, I'm willing to work something out. But I'm not just handing over half of everything. I've kept the business running. I've paid the property taxes. I've made sure the estate didn't fall apart after Dad passed. That should count for something. I nodded, keeping my voice calm. I'm not here to destroy what you've built, Jake. But let's be honest, you didn't build this from nothing. Dad left it to both of us. You just took it all for yourself. Jake tensed, but he didn't argue. Mr. Reynolds interjected, legally, we have a few options. Ethan has grounds to challenge the will under the claim of undue influence. If we go to court, this could take years, and the business could suffer in the meantime. Jake's fingers drummed on the table. So what do you want? I took a deep breath. 3 things. Jake raised an eyebrow. 3? First, I said, I want my share of the estate, not just scraps, not just whatever you think is fair. A real, legal share of what Dad left behind. Jake nodded slowly. All right, what's the second? The second thing is the truth, I said firmly. You have to admit to the rest of the family what you did. No more pretending that Dad changed the will for a good reason. No more lying about why I was cut out. You tell everyone the truth. Jake stiffened, his jaw clenching. That's non-negotiable, I interrupted. I deserve that. A long silence. Then, finally, Jake let out a slow breath. Fine. And the third? I leaned forward. The business. You want to run it? Fine, but I get a stake. I won't interfere with day-to-day operations, but I deserve to be part of the company that our father built. Jake's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked at the lawyer. And if I refuse? Mr. Reynolds sighed. Then Ethan can pursue a lawsuit, which, given what's been admitted, could very likely overturn the will. The court could force a sale of assets to divide them fairly. Jake looked back at me, his expression unreadable. I stared at him, waiting. This was it, the moment of truth. Would he cling to his pride? Would he throw everything away just to keep me from getting my fair share? Or would he finally do the right thing? The decision. Seconds felt like hours. The whole room was holding its breath. Finally, Jake exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. Fine, we'll split the estate properly. And I'll give you a stake in the business. The weight on my chest lifted slightly. But, Jake added, I'm not making some big dramatic confession in front of the family. I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding. I narrowed my eyes. Not good enough. You have to admit you lied. Jake groaned, rubbing his temples. Why do you even care? You got what you wanted. I shook my head. No, this was never just about money, Jake. It's about respect. You spent years making me feel like I didn't matter. Like I wasn't part of this family. And I'm done letting you do that. Jake looked away, his jaw tightening. I could see the struggle in his eyes. He wasn't used to admitting when he was wrong. After a long silence, he muttered, Fine. I'll tell them the truth. The tension in the room finally broke. Mr. Reynolds nodded. Good. Then let's make it official. The aftermath. A week later, our family gathered for a meeting at my aunt's house. Jake stood up in front of everyone and, though he clearly hated every second of it, admitted what he had done. He didn't make excuses. He didn't try to spin the story. He told the truth. It was uncomfortable. Some people were shocked, others disappointed. But it was necessary, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly part of this family again. Jake and I would never be the same. There was too much damage, too much history. But this was a start. In the weeks following Jake's confession, things were different. Not perfect, not magically healed, but different. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own family. Mending. What's broken? After the family meeting, some relatives reached out to check on me. My aunt, who had always suspected something was off about the will, apologized for not asking more questions sooner. My cousins, who had always just assumed Jake was the responsible older brother, finally understood why I had been so distant. But the most surprising change came from Jake himself. A week after the meeting, he called me. I signed the documents, he said awkwardly. Your share of the estate is officially yours. And the lawyers are finalizing your stake in the business. I sat there for a moment, processing his words. I had fought for this for so long, but hearing him say it still felt surreal. Thanks, Jake, I finally said. There was a pause on the other end. Then, he cleared his throat. Yeah, well, I should have done it sooner. That was the closest I was ever going to get to an apology. And honestly, it was enough. Moving forward, with my share of the inheritance, I had real financial stability for the first time in my life. I wasn't struggling anymore. I used part of the money to finally move into my own place, a home that was truly mine. As for the business, I kept my stake but didn't get too involved. I had no interest in running it, but I made sure my voice was heard. If nothing else, I wasn't invisible anymore. Jake and I weren't suddenly best friends. Years of resentment don't just disappear overnight. But things got civil, which was more than I could have hoped for. We started talking again. Small things, at first. Family events, business updates, the occasional joke, and little by little, the weight of the past began to lift. Lessons learned. Looking back, I realized something. This was never just about money. It was about respect, fairness, and standing up for myself. For so long, I had let Jake dictate the narrative. I had let him push me aside, convince me that I didn't deserve what was rightfully mine. But I wasn't that person anymore. Fighting for what's right isn't always easy. It's messy, it's painful, and sometimes it means facing the people you love and demanding better from them. But it's worth it, because in the end, no one else is going to fight for you. You have to fight for yourself. Hey everyone, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching my story. This has been an emotional journey, and I know that many of you out there might be facing something similar, the feeling of being overlooked, unrecognized, and having to fight for what's rightfully yours. Have you ever been through something like this? If so, I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Family can be the greatest support, but sometimes it can also be the source of our deepest pain. Don't forget to hit like if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. I'll keep sharing real-life struggles, stories of injustice, family conflicts, and the tough choices we all have to make. Turn on notifications so you'll be the first to see my latest videos. And if you know someone going through something similar, share this video with them. It might help them feel understood and find the strength to stand up for themselves. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video. Quote.